A few years ago, I was on a panel very similar to this, and I had been invited because of my position as an educator in the country. And the topic of discussion was the future of education in India. And I was very excited to be there and to engage in this conversation. But very quickly, the conversation turned rather negative and cynical. And I began to wonder, do I really want to be on this stage? And at one point, the moderator turned to me and said, Mr. Johnson, what has been painted here is a very hopeless picture for the education of India. Is there hope? And all eyes were on me. And the audience must have been 10 times the size of this audience, and they had at least 4 cameras as opposed to 1. So I knew whatever I said was going to become a soundbite on every single web page and newsletter that was going to go out. But it was very easy for me to find hope, because I spent a lot of time in Indian schools, and I grew up in India. And I said, actually, I think the landscape of Indian education is quite the contrary to hopeless. I think it is very hopeful. And what I'd like to do today is give you 30 seconds to think about how I answered the following question. I said, there is actually one variable in the DNA of Indian education that most countries in the world would give up most of what they have to get that. There's something we have in this country, in the DNA of our educational paradigm, that most countries would trade anything to get. What is that? Don't raise your hand. I'm not asking for your feedback. I'm asking you to think about this for 15 or 20 seconds. What is that variable? Kind of nod your head if you think you know something about Indian education that most... Go ahead, just nod your head, give me a positive vibe. Education in India is revered. When you walk into a school, kids have a holy religious reverence for learning and for education. The deep, profound reverence that most countries would trade anything to get. And to personify this reverence, I'll share a small story with you. I was tutoring a child from a local municipal school in my neighborhood, and I was trying to teach him, get him to understand the concept of gravity. And he just wasn't getting it. So I picked up his textbook, and I said, let me show you gravity. And I dropped the textbook to the ground. And the young boy goes, and I said, he got it. He said, sir, how can you drop a book? How can you drop a book on the ground? And he picked up the book and he wiped off the book and he wanted to go wash the book. He wanted to put a new cardboard covering around the book because the book symbolized learning. So if India has that, and I'll tell you what, it was the same in 1972 and it's the same now, but if we don't leverage that soon, we could lose that and have the kinds of school environments that much of the world have where kids don't want to learn and they don't want to go to school. Our kids still do. That brings me to a quote from the Vedic text, the Upanishads, and I want to read this quote to you. By the way, this quote is 3,000 years old. It could have been written tomorrow. The quote from the Upanishad says, knowledge without wisdom leads to sorrow. Indian education has nailed the knowledge part. It's there. The concept of wisdom is in the fulcrum of the future. And I believe in the 21st century, 2014, wisdom means skills and the application of knowledge. This is where the educational institutions around the world are failing. And this is why this organization exists. Let me explain. I read your mission statement. By the way, you need to know the American School of Bombay just doesn't invite anybody into our school. We don't partner with just anybody. When I get a request, I have an entire team of lawyers and everybody else that digs in and does their homework before we invite someone into our school. So the very fact that you're here says you deserve to be here with us talking about these very important topics. So in the process of studying who you are, I read your mission statement. And it has 5 verbs. So in other words, you need to know that your organization, the Indian Career Education Development Council, has said these are the 5 verbs in our mission. Now at this point, usually if you were my teachers, I would say, tell me our mission. I won't test you on that. I will begin by telling you the verbs that are not in your mission. The verbs that are not in the mission of the Indian Education Career Council Development are to memorize. This is not one of your verbs. To recite. This is not one of your verbs. To study. This is not one of your verbs. To test. This is not one of your verbs. To inform is not one of your verbs. The 5 verbs in your organization's mission statement are to explore, to understand, to decide, to plan, and to execute. And these 5 verbs, explore, understand, decide, plan, and execute, in real-life scenarios to create a youth in India and the world that is self-directed and self-informed. That's in the mission statement. Great, lofty language. But what's the main objective of this organization? If you keep clicking around your website, you find a paragraph that says, our main objective is. Your main objective is, and I'll quote a piece of the paragraph, to collaborate with government, schools, and industry. You got to pull these 3 together. You got to get the government, you got to get the industry, and we are the bridge. Schools are the bridge. And what are you going to do with this collaboration? And I quote, you are going to harness. That's a great verb. Harness means like to grab it, use it, leverage it. You're going to harness technological and economic change and enable a country to compete effectively in the global market. That is the main objective of this organization, is to harness the technological and economic change to allow a country to effectively compete in the global market. And that is why you are here today. Today you are here partnering with the American School of Bombay because we, very much like you, believe in those 5 verbs and in your main objective. But let me tell you why we believe that. In the American School of Bombay's mission, we have optimism, we have courage, we have integrity, we have skills, we have inquiry, we have pursuing dreams, and we have enhancing the lives of others. Those are all phrases from our mission statement. But the tagline of the American School of Bombay is School for the Future. Not School of the Future, because that's some fictional something. We are the School for the Future. And coming up with this tagline, and I'm going to share this with you, was born out of fear. As a school, if schools look at themselves in the mirror, they should be afraid of becoming irrelevant and obsolete. Because the future is coming at us so fast and so different from the past that if we do not do something, we are going to become irrelevant. Many schools are patting themselves on the backs because of test scores or whatever. Take those kids and throw them 4 or 5 years in the future. How will they adapt is the question. One of the data points that gave birth to this fear of irrelevance is a philosophical and technological hypothesis or concept called singularity. Singularity is the belief and the hypothesis, and it is a hypothesis that is very quickly becoming proven, that artificial intelligence is on a trajectory to equal human intelligence somewhere in 2035. I'll still be alive. The hypothesis of singularity is suggesting that artificial, computerized, technological intelligence is going to reach a point when it is equal or perhaps beginning to surpass human intelligence. And I'll tell you right now, artificial intelligence can already beat us at memorizing, testing, informing, reciting, done. We cannot compete with them. We still have the edge on artificial intelligence, on exploring, understanding, deciding, planning, and executing. The verbs from your mission. Your mission is making a future relevant. I want to end with the following question that we, as the American School of Bombay, asked ourselves 5 years ago when we built our strategic plan. The question is, now that we know what 2035 might look like, what are we going to do about it? Not 2016, not 2017. I'll leave you with the following question. How do we partner with government and education and industry to create a structure for our youth to grow up prepared for a future that does not exist and a future that they themselves will create? Good luck with that one. Thank you very much.